Just recently, a good friend of mine had a baby. In fact, for the 9 months leading up to the birth of her baby, there was this sense of expectation, this hopefulness. Every time I saw her, I pestered her about what she was going to name the baby, the gender of the baby, which they kept a secret until the end, or, the beginning, when the baby was born. It's a boy. Anyway, there was this sense of when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Especially in those last couple of weeks, right? Those last 4, 5, 6 weeks before the baby's born, there's this looking at the belly and then looking at the mom and then looking at the watch and looking at the calendar and saying, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? In fact, the last few conversations I had with her before the baby was born, I thought that baby was about to burst out at any given moment. In one particular conversation that she and I had, she kind of looked uncomfortable. She fidgeted in her seat a little bit. She had this pained look on her face. At one point, I saw her purse her lips, close her eyes, and breathe. And I said, this is it. It's baby time. Well, about an hour after we talked, she said, I thought I was in labor, and I wasn't. It went away. Well, the fact of the matter is, I've never been pregnant, in case you can't tell, but there's this sense of something's about to happen when a mother is expecting, isn't there? You see, with birth pains comes new life. There's both pain and excitement. It's this metaphor that Jesus uses in what's affectionately called the Olivet Discourse, or the Little Apocalypse. I'm going to be reading from Mark chapter 13. It is at this particular point during the last week of Jesus' ministry leading up to his crucifixion that he takes a teaching opportunity. In fact, this particular sermon is across all 3 synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. When the gospel writers are united in their presentation of material, we ought to be especially paying attention. And of course, this is a really difficult text. I'm not going to begin to try to explain away every last verse of all of Mark 13. Sorry, that's not the intention of this video series. Instead, what I hope to do is to encourage us in the face of difficulty, in the face of trials, in the face of, warfare. Jesus gives us a sense in how we are to live our lives, even when things are difficult. Of course, Jesus is anticipating the fact that something cataclysmic is about to happen. This is going to usher in a new era. What's going to happen on the cross in the empty tomb is signaling that God is doing something. The birth pains of an existence that's breaking through into our reality. Mark chapter 13, beginning in verse 1. And as he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings." They're excited to be with Jesus at the temple. And Jesus said to him, verse 2, "Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." What an introduction to a sermon. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when all these things are about to be accomplished?" And Jesus began to say to them, "See that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. And when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. These are but the beginning of your birth pains. But be on your guard, for they will deliver you over to councils, and you will be beaten in synagogues, and you will stand before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them. And the gospel must first be proclaimed to all nations. And when they bring you to trial and deliver you over, do not be anxious beforehand what you are to say, but say whatever is given you in that hour, for it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. And brother will deliver brother over to death, and the father his child, and children will rise against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. There's so much more in this passage that we could look into. I'm not about to continue reading this morning. What I do want to do is encourage us when it concerns how we are to live right here and right now in light of what Jesus has said. Jesus points once again to the temple. His disciples point to the temple and ask for Jesus' commentary on it. And Jesus tells them it's just a structure. Not one stone will be left unturned. Jesus is redefining how Israel is gathered, how they are assembled, how it is structured, and he's doing it around himself. Jesus talks about kind of this prophetic layering that's happening in this particular chapter, talking about persecution and false prophets, the abomination of desolation. I can barely even say it, right? Which, hey, if you've got questions about that, put it in the comments. I'd love to follow up with you personally. I see it as a metaphor from imagery in Daniel, referring once again to the temple. This is a passage that contains information on the second coming. I love the way that N.T. Wright looks at this passage. What he says is this, that Jesus had the right to do and be what the temple was and did. Jesus now is reconstituting the temple. You see, there's been a lot of people over the centuries who have tried to stir up a lot of clamor about the end of the world or the second coming. And Jesus instead, in this very same sermon, says, not even he knows the day nor the hour, only the Father. Any attempts to try to stir up fervor over the end of the world is futile. What we do have instead in the meantime, we're living in this liminal space, in this in-between zone of what was and what is to come. We're living in the here and now, and Jesus tells us how to live. That's good news. Here's what he tells us. Do not be deceived. Do not be deceived. We have something we can bank on, something to stand firm in. In verse 31, he says that the word of the Lord remains forever. In a world where everything has been rapidly changing, everything from, of course, mandates on what we're supposed to put on our faces, all the way down to gas prices, hey, it's really good, isn't it, to have something that isn't going anywhere, something that's just as relevant today as it was then. Jesus tells us to stand firm in persecution. If you find yourself under the gun, if your integrity's on the line, Jesus tells us how to have unwavering devotion to the Father. Jesus tells us to proclaim the good news. We've got a job to do. There are still lost and dying souls around us on every corner, and we have been told what to communicate as his messengers, and we've been told how to do so as well. We've been told, of course, to lament with people as Jesus does. There is going to be pain in this time. There's going to be wars and rumors of wars. What do we do with these wars? Well, not to be distressed, but to be kind, to be helpful, to be loving. Jesus tells us, of course, at this particular stage of his ministry, well, what he's always been telling us, doesn't he? To love God and to love others. One chapter previous in Mark chapter 12 is on this particular day of Jesus' last week of his life and ministry, where he instructs his disciples and those who would be his disciples concerning the greatest commands. When it's all said and done, what does it boil down to? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. I don't know about you, but that sounds like enough work to do for today, doesn't it? So as you go forth from here, let's show the world what it is to have heard the word of the Lord and to love the Lord our God. God bless. See you tomorrow.